A little girl followed her mother to an animal shelter to pick a puppy, but found herself witnessing the moment when a sick pit bull was about to be euthanized. That's when the girl approached him and did something shocking. "Stop! Please don't do it!" The sharp, panicked cry of a little girl pierced through the quiet corridor of the animal shelter. The shout was so unexpected that the shelter worker fumbled with the leash she was holding, the door to the metal cage already half open. Inside the cage, a sickly pit bull lay curled up in the corner, his body trembling as if he knew what was coming next. The shelter worker, Miss Jenkins, glanced over her shoulder in shock. Behind her stood a small, blonde girl with wide, pleading eyes and a voice full of urgency. How had she even found her? Visitors never entered this room. The girl had burst through the doors just as Miss Jenkins was about to lead the pit bull to his final destination. "Sweetheart, this isn't a favorable time," she began, trying to maintain her composure, but the girl wouldn't be swayed. "Please don't let this dog die," she begged. Miss Jenkins looked at the pit bull. His ribs were visible beneath his dull, patchy fur. His eyes were clouded with sickness, and his body barely moved. This dog had been through so much, and his time had run out. But the desperation in the girl's voice made her pause. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and click the notification bell for more amazing stories. He had been at the shelter for far too long, his illness draining the meager resources they had. No one had come forward to adopt him, and his condition had only worsened. This was the only choice left. At least, that's what they told themselves. Miss Jenkins swallowed hard and tried to reason with herself. Euthanasia was a mercy, a kindness. Rex wouldn't suffer anymore. But looking at the little girl standing there, she couldn't help but feel that gnawing doubt. The leash was still in her hand. The door to the cage was still open. Rex had yet to move, resigned to whatever fate awaited him. But little girl, a woman, appeared behind the girl, breathing heavily, as if she had been running, unsure what was happening, but sensing the gravity of the situation. Claire reached out to her daughter, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder, but the girl remained rooted to the spot, her gaze fixed on the pit bull. "Mom," the girl whispered, her voice trembling. "Mom, look at him." Claire's gaze followed her daughter's, settling on the pit bull's frail body. His breath was shallow, and his eyes were dim. She bit her lip, torn between the logic of the situation and the emotion swelling in her chest. "Emma." Emma shook her head slowly. "No, not yet." Miss Jenkins took a deep breath and glanced at the vet tech standing nearby, who was waiting for her to give the go-ahead. Time seemed to stretch out, and the room was heavy with the weight of the decision that hung in the air. "Please," Emma whispered again, her voice barely audible but filled with a strange sense of urgency that neither Miss Jenkins nor her mother could quite understand. Claire sighed, knowing there was no easy way to walk away from this. She kneeled down beside her daughter, looking at her with soft eyes. "Sweetheart, this dog is very sick. He's suffering. Sometimes we have to make hard choices to help them." But Emma didn't respond. Her eyes remained locked on Rex. And then, with a sudden movement, she stepped closer to the cage. Miss Jenkins flinched, almost instinctively pulling the leash tighter. But Emma didn't stop. She reached through the bars, her small hand trembling as she stretched it toward Rex. The pit bull blinked slowly, his head tilting just slightly as he sniffed to the air, his gaze finally focusing on the girl's outstretched fingers. Claire held her breath, her heart pounding in her chest. Miss Jenkins watched in silence, her hands frozen, unable to pull the dog away. No one moved. No one spoke. Time seemed to stand still as Emma's fingers brushed against Rex's nose. The dog didn't flinch. He didn't snarl or growl. He simply looked at the girl with tired, sad eyes. Emma knelt down so she was level with the cage, her face just inches away from Rex. "It's okay," she whispered, her voice soothing. "It's okay." As she gazed at the trembling dog, her mind drifted back to the start of this momentous day. Earlier that morning, Emma had woken up with a strange feeling in her chest. Something she couldn't quite name. It was a mixture of excitement and anxiety, a sensation she didn't understand but couldn't ignore. Today was the day they were going to the animal shelter, and Emma had been waiting for it for what felt like forever. She had been asking her mother for a dog for months, ever since she saw her neighbor's golden retriever playing in the yard one afternoon. Emma had watched that dog chase after a ball, tail wagging, tongue hanging out, and pure joy radiating from its every movement. She had wanted that joy in her life too. But her mother, Claire, had always been cautious. Raising the dog was a big responsibility, and she wasn't sure her daughter was ready for it. She didn't want to get a dog only to discover that Emma would lose interest after a few weeks. It was a commitment, and Claire wasn't ready to make it lightly. Still, after weeks of pleading and promises, she had finally agreed to visit the local shelter. "We'll look," she had said, making it clear that they weren't making any promises. "But we're not bringing home a dog just because it looks cute. We have to be sure." Emma had nodded eagerly, understanding that her mother was trying to be responsible, but her heart was already set. She knew she would find the perfect dog, one that needed her as much as she needed it. When they arrived at the shelter, Emma had practically bounced out of the car, her excitement bubbling over. Inside, the shelter was bustling with activity. There were rows of cages filled with dogs of all shapes and sizes, some barking loudly, others lying quietly in the corners. Emma had walked up and down the rows, looking into each cage, hoping to find the perfect dog for her. Some of the puppies were friendly, wagging their tails and jumping up to greet her. Others were shy, hiding behind their cages, wary of strangers passing by. Just as she was about to give up hope, Emma spotted a cage at the far end of the room. Inside, there was a pit bull lying motionless on the floor. He didn't bark or wag his tail. He didn't even lift his head when she approached. Something about the way he just lay there, so still and quiet, tugged at her heart. She knelt down in front of the cage, trying to get a closer look. His fur was patchy and dull, and his body looked frail, as if he hadn't eaten in days. His eyes were half closed, and his breathing was shallow. "Mom," Emma had her voice filled with concern. "Look at him. He looks so sad." Claire had walked over and kneeled beside her daughter, her own heart aching at the sight of the pit bull. He was in rough shape, far worse than the other dogs they had seen. She didn't want to admit it, but Dog might not have much time left. "Sweetie, he's very sick," Claire had said gently. "I don't know if we can help him." Emma, however, had shaken her head, her eyes never leaving the pit bull. "He just needs someone to love him," Claire had hesitated, torn between her desire to protect her daughter from heartbreak and the hope that maybe, just maybe, they could make a difference in this dog's life. When Miss Jenkins approached them, her expression was somber. "I'm sorry, but this dog is scheduled to be euthanized today. He's been here for a long time, and, well, we've tried everything we can, but he hasn't gotten better." The words had hit Emma like a punch to the gut. Euthanized. She knew it meant they were giving him an injection that would make him close his eyes forever. The word echoed in her mind, cold and final. She couldn't let that happen. But what could she do? Now, standing in the back room, Emma's heart raced as she reached through the bars, her fingers brushing against Rex's fur. The pit bull blinked again, his eyes slowly clearing as he looked at her with something that resembled curiosity. Miss Jenkins and Claire watched in stunned silence as Emma whispered softly to the dog, her voice barely audible but filled with warmth and kindness. Rex leaned forward just slightly, his nose pressing against her hand. The room remained still, the tension thick in the air. Miss Jenkins felt the leash in her hand slacken as she let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. The vet tech shifted uncomfortably, unsure of what to do next. Then, without a word, Emma did something no one expected. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, crumpled piece of paper. She unfolded it carefully, her hands shaking as she smoothed it out on the floor. Miss Jenkins, Claire, and the vet tech all stared at the paper, unsure of what they were seeing. It was a simple drawing, a child's sketch of a dog with a heart above his head. Next to the drawing, in wobbly handwriting, were the words, "I'll be your friend." And that was when it all clicked. The shocking thing Emma had done wasn't just her plea to save Rex. It was the fact that she had come prepared, fully believing that this dog, this sick and broken dog, was meant to be hers. She had written him a promise before she even met him. Claire stared at her daughter in disbelief. "Emma, honey, we can't just—" "Yes, we can," Emma interrupted, her voice steady. "He needs us, Mom. He needs me." Miss Jenkins, still watching from behind the desk, felt her heart soften. "I have to be honest with you," she said. "Rex, he's not well. He's been here for a long time, and he needs a lot of care. We were planning to him down." Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't back down. "That's why we have to help him. We can make him better, right, Mom?" Claire looked from her daughter to the pit bull, and something inside her shifted. She saw the way Rex looked at Emma, the way his eyes seemed to plead for a second chance. She took a deep breath and nodded. "Okay, we'll take him." Miss Jenkins couldn't hide her surprise. "You will?" "Yes," Claire said, her voice firmer now. "We'll take him home and do whatever it takes to make him better." And so, against all odds, Rex left the shelter that day, not with a sense of finality, but with a new beginning. The first few weeks were hard. Rex required constant care, medication, special baths, and frequent vet visits. But Emma was determined. She never left his side, always there to comfort him, to stroke his fur when he was in pain, to whisper words of encouragement in his ear. Slowly but surely, Rex began to improve. His fur started to grow back, his eyes cleared, and his energy returned. He went from a dog who could barely lift his head to one who chased Emma around the yard, his tail wagging furiously. But more than that, Rex became a protector. He watched over Emma with a fierce loyalty, always by her side, always ready to defend her if needed. And Emma, in turn, loved him with all her heart. They were inseparable. Not everyone in the neighborhood was thrilled with their new addition. Some of the neighbors whispered behind Claire's back, questioning why she would let her daughter keep a pit bull, especially one that had been so sick. They warned her that pit bulls were dangerous, that it was only a matter of time before something bad happened. Claire tried to ignore them, but the doubt started to creep in. One night, after a particularly long day, she sat down with Emma. "Are you sure about Rex?" she asked softly. "I mean, are you really sure he's the right dog for us?" Emma looked at her mother, her eyes full of confidence. "Mom, Rex would never hurt anyone. He's good. He just needed someone to believe in him." Claire nodded, hoping her daughter was right. But then, one afternoon, something happened that made her question everything. Emma was playing in the backyard with Rex when a stray cat wandered into their yard. Still full of energy, the dog spotted the intruder and took off after it. Cat hissed and swatted at Rex, and for a split second, Claire's heart stopped. She saw the pit bull's powerful jaws snap at the cat, and she was sure something terrible was about to happen. But then, Rex stopped. He pulled back, his body tense but controlled. He looked at the cat, then at Emma, and slowly backed away, his tail wagging uncertainly. Emma knelt down beside him, wrapping her arms around his neck. "It's okay, Rex," she whispered. "You're a good boy." And in that moment, Claire knew that her daughter had been right all along. Months passed, and Rex became a beloved member of the family. The once sick and broken pit bull was now a picture of health and happiness. He had transformed, not just physically, but emotionally, thanks to the love and care of a little girl who had seen something in him that no one else had. One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned a brilliant shade of orange, Claire sat on the porch, watching Emma and Rex play in the yard. She couldn't help but marvel at how much their lives had changed since that day at the shelter. Rex had gone from a dog who was about to be euthanized to a dog who had found a new lease on life, a life filled with love, joy, and second chances. And it was all because a little blonde girl had approached him, held out her hand, and done something shocking. She had believed in him when no one else did. As Claire watched her daughter laugh and run with Rex, she realized that sometimes the most unexpected choices can lead to the most beautiful outcomes. Have you ever witnessed a small act of compassion that had a profound impact on someone's life? What would you do if you were in Emma's position, facing the decision to save a sick dog that others had given up on? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. And thank you for listening to this heartwarming tale of a little girl's unwavering belief in the power of love and second chances. Join us for more interesting and compassionate stories like this one. Binding bonds through beautiful tales. Thank you for watching.